So, welcome, Bart Banfield. Tell me a bit about yourself. I know you have been in the AI space and the education space for, I would say, 20, 25 years now. And we are very excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Alina, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit about one of my favorite topics, artificial intelligence. And so it's revolutionizing every sector of society, including K-12, which is where my background is.
So, what are your thoughts about AI education in 2026 and K-12? We have seen governments in Canada, in US, in China making AI education mandatory as early as kindergarten. I mean, are we prepared for this? And how is this actually going to even look like? What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so the answer to your question is no, we're not ready for it yet, but it is coming. And so we're trying to get prepared. And I think, as far as AI, particularly in the K-12 sector, which is where I come from, it's still in its infancy. And there's a lot of apprehension. I think, when you look at how it's proliferating around the globe, particularly with adults, there is sort of this trial and error with artificial intelligence, but it's still in its infancy and it's still learning and growing. And as far as the K-12 sector goes, though, we're talking about children.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about children, there's a whole nother level of safety and concern that is required in order to make sure that we are not introducing something to children that could be harmful. And we don't have a lot of research at this point on the benefits or the drawbacks of AI. And so, but it's just rapidly growing at warp speed. And so when you look at where it's going over the next 3 to 5 years, you're looking at AI, eventually AGI, and then down the road, we've got quantum that's coming. And
Mhm.
so it's something that we absolutely need to embrace. We need guardrails when it comes to students and their data. But it's essential as educators, and I'm a certified educator, it's essential that we expose them to this new technology and the world that they're going to graduate into, because it's a different world, Alina, than the one that you and I
Mhm.
graduated into. And so we've got to prepare them for their future.
Yeah. And kids basically have access to this technology. But let's be honest, it's very unregulated. Our sandwiches have got more regulation in them than this AI technology, which is the reality right now. And our kids, our teens are using AI without understanding how it works. Many, unfortunately, are treating it as their friend. And I even see it with my teens and my kids. They are essentially using AI without an understanding as to how it works and how much data do you give it. And the more you interact with it, and they essentially trust it. They often trust it more than they would trust a person, which is why we should have some policy around this and education and training. And our schooling systems are now having these conversations. Many are struggling and they're trying to fight this new trend. And many are saying, well, how do you proof against AI? How do you make sure our students are not using AI to do their homework, to do their assessments? But honestly, we just need to assume that they are using AI. And I see it myself in the previous semester, I would say close to 100% of my students, I can see that they were using AI for research to submit their papers. And if you ask them to write an essay, it's gotten perfect, right? So the question is, how do you adapt to this? How do you modify those assessments? And what have you been seeing as an educator, as an AI futurist, as to where do you feel this is progressing?
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear your background because obviously you're in the higher ed sector. I've been in the K-12 sector for the past 27 years, but we're seeing the same thing. And so
Yep.
I'm just like you. I've got three kids, 29, 25, and 15, and they're all three utilizing AI
Yeah.
on a daily basis. In fact, it's become their go-to. I think, you go back 20, 30 years ago, Google was sort of the go-to when you had questions and you wanted answers to. That no longer is the case. And regardless of which large language model you use, students are utilizing this technology. And so I think the answer to your question is we've got to go back to the drawing board in terms of number one, what is the type of education these children need to receive to be relevant to the world that they're graduating into. And so, the 21st century is sort of broken up into two parts now. We have pre-AI and we have post-AI. And so it's a different world. And AI is going to revolutionize every sector of society. So when you look at the adoption right now, at least in the K-12 space, administrators and adults are very apprehensive about embracing this technology because they're concerned about the
Mhm.
safety of the students. And so there is a theory, the diffusion of innovation theory, that sort of follows this bell curve in terms of early adopters versus late adopters versus laggards. And I think what I've seen in the K-12 space is that most folks are on the back end of that bell curve and waiting to see the impact of AI. There's no question that it has power and potential to revolutionize all kinds of sectors and bring humankind benefit. But at the same time, we know, based on what we learned from social media, that not all technology is good, and there's positives and negatives to what that looks like. And so we want to be very careful how we introduce this. And so back to your point, I think guardrails are essential. I think it really starts at the government level. I think we need to lay out a framework that we can all agree on that provides these guardrails to make sure that students are safe as they begin to learn this new technology.
That's actually a very good point. And these guardrails are extremely difficult to implement.
Mhm.
And it's also very difficult to contain this because now you have got access. Anyone can go start an account. I have a 9-year-old that is using ChatGPT and having a good time without understanding what exactly is going on. And that really does concern me, to be honest, as a parent. And my teens that they are in high school and they're going to be going into university. And now they're asking me, well, what should we study? If AI is so good at everything, and if I want to be a writer, why should I? If AI is better than me at writing, is better than me at creating poems and whatever. And what is it that we should learn and how to choose that career path? And I think historically, we have seen in the previous century, you study a subject, you become an expert, you get into a job, and you sit at your job for pretty much your entire life. Now, you don't have this luxury anymore. Now, you are going to be adapting, you're going to be changing and moving. You might be changing 10 jobs or maybe 10 fields. And I'm seeing actually, we just posted for an AI intern. We got 350 resumes in only a couple hours. And the message is clear. They're saying, I want to learn AI. I want to be in it because if I'm not learning, if I'm not doing, I'm going to be left behind. And it's surprising how fast all of this is moving and transitioning. And I agree with you. This has to start at the government level. And schools K-12 as well as higher education, uh, they tend to be behind the other industries that we're seeing, the financial industry, the healthcare industry. There are many industries such as retail. They are moving lightning speed with AI, especially if you are in an unregulated industry. You're going to be going after AI agents. You're going to be plugging it ever which way, sometimes without guardrails. So in K-12, are we waiting? Are we actually waiting for the government to tell us, hey, let's make this? And I believe Trump made this in the US mandatory from kindergarten, something like 8 hours of education. So how you are going about this in the States?
Yeah, I think with caution is the answer to your question. But back to students that are graduating and trying to decide, do I want to go to college, and if so, what do I study? I think it's less important what you study, and more important why you study. And I think what's essential in the age of AI, back to your point, that we're going to have, the average American graduate right now will have 13 different jobs in their lifetime. And so what you're going to see is this constant and consistent upskilling and reskilling that's necessary in order to remain relevant in that world that they're going to graduate into. And so what's essential from a K-12 standpoint is that we develop a growth mindset. So it's really important that with these students that are graduating, that they have this cycle of continuous improvement, this growth mindset where they're constantly learning, because you might start off with X, but you eventually will end up with Y. And so what we're
Mhm.
trying to do is expose them to as many different clusters of learning and pathways that we possibly can, so that they can continue to be successful when they graduate.
Mhm. What would you recommend to our viewers, to our parents, those that are mm, trying to make sure that we stay relevant in the next 3, 5 years? And the World Economic Forum is saying that AI skills are going to be that number one skill is going to be AI literacy in education. So, what would you recommend to those that have got kids, teens, and the parents out there?
Yes, it's an interesting question because in 2030, we will have four different generations that are entering the workforce at the same time. And so when you look at that, this AI world that you and I are talking about, this new world order is going to impact not just students, but it's going to impact adults as well. So parents and grandparents, and in some cases, great grandparents that are still working, um, are going to be impacted by AI. And so it's important that they understand the importance of continuing to embrace that growth mindset that we talked about earlier, and that you can't just, the days of going to work with the same corporation for 20 or 30 or 40 years and then retiring, those days are gone.
Mhm.
That's no longer relevant, and so I think we've got to work as a society to make sure that we are redefining success and what that looks like. Because you and I could spend another hour talking about identity and how our identities get wrapped up in our professional title or how much money we make or whatever that looks like. Success has been defined by society over the last 50 to 100 years as this, and it's going to be different. It's going to be different in this AI world. And so I think it's important that we all come together in a very unified way to create some structure, the guardrails we talked about, and to redefine what success looks like, what identity looks like. These are very
Yeah.
deep, complex, psychological type topics that are going to require almost philosophers, 21st century philosophers, to help us navigate these uncharted waters.
I definitely agree with you. It's going to be interesting because many of us are defining ourselves by our jobs. And if you are not your job, and if AI can do your job or many of our jobs, then where do we stand? So
Yeah.
I actually want to thank you for this discussion today. And if you could give a couple of words to sum it up to our viewers.
Yeah, I thank you, Alina, again for the opportunity to visit with you, and wish you and the entire team the very best going forward. It's an important topic. AI is a very important topic. It's something that we need to get a lot of different thoughts from a lot of different leaders, and sort of put this to the forefront where we're having open, honest discussions about AI. I tell any of your listeners that want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, Bart Banfield, and then also if you're interested, I've published a book called Virtual Leadership. It's available on Amazon and other bookstores online. It's the essential principles for remote work. And so anybody that wants to connect with me, I'd love to connect with them. My work sits at the intersection of K-12 and ed tech. And so happy to sit down and visit with anybody. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great to have you. And do check out Bart Banfield on LinkedIn. There is a book on Amazon. And Bart is education futurist AI and learning innovator, author of the book Virtual Leadership. So do check it out. We are going to put the link for you below for you to take a look. So thank you, everyone.